Welcome to Meat for Men, the digital devotional. This is taken from the Meat for Men Bible study, which was taught live on Zoom in June 2021. You can find the complete study on YAM TV under the playlist Meat for Men. Links to devotional notes are in the description. Did God fail because Adam failed? I'm not going to do a poll, so...
No, the answer is no.
Why? Do you have a why?
Because there is no failure in God.
Yes, we'll accept that. So I've got here, if it comes up, God did not fail, so he had no need to alter his order. When the priesthood failed, he didn't get fed up and come in the form of a woman. He came in the form of a man made under the law, a sinless male sacrifice to be propitiation for our sins, in line with his own order. Male headship and leadership of the home and God's own house will always be divine and biblical order. No devil from hell can change that. There is a pattern that was established in Genesis, and I've just gone over what we discussed last week. And Jesus and God himself, through Jesus, came in that pattern. And so because he did not fail, didn't need to change his order, then he probably would have come in the form of a woman if it was that bad. If the whole of the male species was so failed and so destroyed, then why didn't he come as a woman? So there's this whole thing about God as a woman. We need to be careful because we're playing with stuff we don't understand when we start dealing with nonsense like that. He established headship to be male, and we've gone through that last week, and we'll go more into that this week. So Genesis 3:16 indicates because of the fall, a battle of the sexes. It does not affirm or reaffirm divine order, which was clearly set before the fall. The question was asked in light of Genesis 3:17, should a man never listen to the counsel of his wife or woman in general? And we answered that last week. Well, we're going to get a bit deeper into that now. Just for anybody who's new to this, the answer was obviously no. A man, sorry. Yeah, what was the question? Yeah, no. A man should listen to the counsel of his wife. It's not because he was told Adam was criticized for listening to his wife that he should never listen to his wife or a woman. But we're going to get into why God said what he said. So we're starting this week, and the special guest doesn't know what's going to face him. Technically, he's just been given a brief idea. He doesn't know the topic, so this is going to be interesting. So this topic, what we're going to deal with now, is how to listen to your wife. So Adam listened to his wife, which in principle is not wrong. But why was it wrong in the context of Genesis 3? Could anybody answer that? Adam listened to his wife, which we understood last week that in principle is not wrong, but why was it wrong in the context of Genesis 3? For Adam to listen to his wife.
Because she caused them to sin. You can't listen to people who's gonna lead you to sin, and he knew what was right. Even in Ephesians, it says that parents, children, listen to your parents, for this is, honor your mother and father, for this is right, isn't it? But I can't remember it fully, but I'm sure there's a caveat that says in the Lord. So you follow those, and even Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. So you follow somebody as much and as far as they're following the will, the rule, and the principle of God. And if you follow them into sin, then that's also your choice, because Adam fully knew, because we spoke about it last week, that God gave Adam the instruction, the principles and the laws that he was then to pass down to Eve.
Right. So we're going to take what you said just in a few angles sideways and a little deeper. So nothing you said was wrong. But let's get into this. Proof of this sort of Genesis 3. So Adam, and unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree, here's the clue now, of which I commanded thee, which you mentioned, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow thou shalt eat of it all the days of thy life. I've got here, Eve is powerful. She was made to help. Adam and Eve's sin of betrayal was a result of role reversal. Adam gave Eve the command and the order for how they were to operate in paradise, based on the fact that the Apostle Paul tells us that he was not deceived. He knew Eve's instruction was not correct or helpful. So he knew that Eve wasn't operating in her role at that time as being a helpmeet. He didn't misunderstand. He wasn't fooled. He was able to identify his helpmeet. If he was able to identify his helpmeet, then he was able, and this is a key thing we're going to discuss, to distinguish between between the law that God gave him and the information that God gave her to help him. So we're going to discuss in a minute. A man is given the ability to know what good instruction his wife is giving to him. He can distinguish between what is helpful and what's not helpful. So it's clear when Adam willfully submitted to the leadership of his wife in attacking God's moral perfection by exhibiting enormous pride and contempt for God's law. So Adam willfully submitted to our leadership. He wasn't deceived about it. But I put, how did the serpent have enough time to build a level of discontent in Eve, which led her to do something contrary to the direction of her husband? Adam was paying enough attention to Eve. Would he not have realized she was in conversation with the enemy? Just because we hear about the serpent once in Genesis, it does not mean he was not there all along. Could it have been Adam's lack of attention to his wife's needs that caused her to seek satisfaction outside of him? It's interesting. We hear about the serpent in Genesis 1, but that's not necessarily the only time he was there or seeking to cause an issue. Why is it at that time Eve listened? Could he not have been talking to her for the whole time they were in the garden? Doesn't say that he wasn't there before. So there's questions we can answer. But anyway, we're going to bring in our married man, because I'm not married. I'm going to stay in my lane. Did Adam fail Eve in the garden? And this is going to be conjecture somewhat, because the Bible doesn't explicitly say certain things. Did his lack of attention to Eve's needs cause her to seek satisfaction elsewhere? How do men's failures cause women to fail? And I'm going to use a quote that he says, and he can tell me if it's right or wrong. If I'm quoting it right, if a man is not, sorry, there's a lot of spelling mistakes here. This was put together at last minute. If a man is not responsible for his wife's issues, he has the ability to fix them.
Yeah. So, greetings, everyone. God bless you. Good afternoon. See you, Sister Janice. God bless you. Kevin, sorry for doing all that. It's just good to see faces. I gotta come closer. All right. Bless you. Good to be with you all and here in the UK. Did Adam fail Eve? So that quote is right. If a man is not responsible for the issues his wife's going through, then he certainly has a responsibility and some God-given ability if he's really seeking the Lord to help resolve those issues. That's a revelation I got. Am I not in shock? Okay, that's a revelation I got. Maybe, I don't know how much detail we go into, but I had a very pivotal turning point in my marriage. That was, I was actually at the end of my rope. I felt for the first time ever, I was going to consider the divorce route. That's how bad it got. And I'd never been in a position where I'd ever thought that, and I had never believed that was something any person should even think about. Like, it was so far from me. But I got to that point. I don't want to give all that testimony now, but when the way the Lord delivered me was with this piece of information, and he used the example from Paul's writing, I believe, to the Ephesians, where he's speaking about man being the head of the wife and the woman being the body. And the Lord said to me, if there's a problem in your body, you don't leave the body to itself to fix itself. I use the intelligence, the knowledge I have. If it's a problem in my arm, then I try and put some attention on that to get it fixed. So that helped me. God was telling me, you're responsible. Like, what your wife's going through right now, her inability to solve those problems, my my willingness to kind of absolve myself of her issues, which is, she needs to sort them out. Those are her issues. She's got to pray. She's got to fast. God was like, no, but it's your body. You can't outsource that. You can't expect the body just to heal itself. Like, if you've got the knowledge of what the problem is, try, you've either caused it, so she's in that situation because of your behavior, or if she's gotten there all by herself, then you've got the ability at some point to try and apply some remedy to that. So that's correct, that statement. That's what the Lord showed me. So back to the question at the top. Yes, Adam failed Eve in the garden because, nothing really changed until he followed her and took of the fruit, right? The world didn't change when Eve sinned. And so this is the big responsibility of a husband, that when the Lord says that you ought to love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself that he might wash her, the implication is that you married somebody imperfect, and that God's expecting you, who has God as your head, to actually get remedy and solution for your house. So, if Adam came back and didn't follow Eve, the world wouldn't have crashed, right? There would have been redemption in the husband's covering. So whether or not the devil did it over a day or a year doesn't really matter. The point is that she gave into temptation, but that wasn't the end of it. The husband's reaction really now sealed the deal. So did his lack of attention to Eve's need cause her to seek satisfaction elsewhere? We don't really know. The devil is very cunning, and he plays on any desire. If we really take James's explanation of temptation, every man is he sins when he's drawn away by what's inside of him, by his own lust. So we can't necessarily blame Adam for the desires that was in his wife. But, certainly the enemy would have been able to, this is how he works, right? He sows a seed and then, gives you an idea, and she allowed the idea to grow. So I wouldn't necessarily want to say every time something goes wrong in your partner, it's your fault. They have their own way of getting into their own issues at times. But how do men's failures cause women to fail? When we don't stand up from a God perspective and apply the word to the situation, sometimes even in trying to be compassionate, like, we really need to try and stay in our word and make sure that we're not applying sympathy to a situation that should have been applied a bit of a rebuke even, or come on, let's wake up, we can do this, let's snap out of this. When do I come in and put my arm around my wife versus saying, come, listen, let's go and pray, because this, God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. That's not from God. Okay. So those are me sharing a bit of my experience. I see hands raised, and I'm glad for that. So let's have some interaction and discussion on this. And I brought some drink with me, so please allow me.
Go ahead, Sabrina.
Oh, hello. I don't know the gentleman's name. What's his name?
Joseph.
Oh, hello, brother Joseph. I just wanted to ask, you made a point regarding like a man being ahead of the house. Do you think that the breakdown in men in society now is that because they haven't had the right role models, they don't really know how to be the head of the house correctly in order for a woman to submit to her husband?
100%. So men, we're just too flaky, right? We're too emotional about issues and problems. So when my wife has an issue, I'm supposed to deal with it as a head. But what I do, I deal with it like I'm part of the body. Understand? So
yeah,
I'm not actually being objective, because I get into the position where I'm trying to win an argument and prove to my wife that she's wrong. Whereas the position I'm supposed to have is more of a problem solver. So first I've got to listen to what she's saying, because, at times what the wife is saying is valid. It's not that she's always off her rocker, as they say, right? It's not that she's crazy. Like, we've done stuff at times to upset, we've done lots of things at times to just like ignore the points that she's trying to make. And now she's at a point of frustration and she's boiling over. And I always say this, when a woman says, I'm done, I've had enough, You know, that's her ringing an alarm bell saying, I need you to pay attention to what I'm saying. But when a man says, I'm done, I've had enough, you ain't gonna see him again. Because like, usually, like when he's done, he's done. When he says, I'm done, I'm done. Like we don't break up and make up like with friends. Like our guy friends, we either have a couple forever. But we don't like be falling in and out. We weren't talking this week and now we're talking. No, we don't do that. So when we say stuff like I'm done, we're done. So yeah, so the man needs to we need to be trained to have thicker skin, because when, you know, like if I'm emotional and my wife says, I've had enough and I'm finished, that's it, I'm done. Like if I break down at that moment and start crying, she can look at me like, what are you crying for? I'm just expressing myself. You know, like she's not about to walk through the door. She's just trying to let you know, I've got nowhere else to go at this point, and I'm at the end of my rope. And so we have to grow in, like if you can get this counsel before going into marriage, because I know we'd all like to think, I'd never behave like that. I'd never speak to my husband like whatever. Right? You'll get to the point where you're really upset and you feel like you've got nowhere else to go. The man needs to know in that season, I don't get in the boxing ring with my wife. I've got to think now, God's expecting me to be a leader here. So the leaders don't really get into, we're not supposed to get into fist fights, but we do. We get dragged into stuff. We get dragged into arguments. And when we take it really emotional and we argue until we feel like we've won the argument, that's not the role of a man. The role of a man is really supposed to be, I'm going to listen to you. I don't even have to answer you directly and straight away. Like it's okay for a man to say, you know what? You know, let me think about how I'm going to deal with this. Let me think about how I'm going to answer this. Because right now, actually, I don't have the words that are going to prevent this from escalating into a bigger argument. You know, and that doesn't necessarily always come across right, because if you want an answer now, and the man starts saying, "Let me come back to you tomorrow," you think this guy's a joke, because you know, that's just passive aggressive. You're just pushing me away. But then this is where wives need to be counseled as well. You know, sometimes a man, he will get up and walk out the house. And you're like, why is he walking out the house? Why doesn't he? If that man stayed in the house, things would have escalated sometimes, right? So he's going to give himself a chance to cool off and cool down so he can deal with this in a proper manner. So a lot of this comes with experience. But yeah, if men were grown and trained to sort of, listen, don't your wife is your partner. And she needs you to lead. Like if she's asking certain questions, it's because she needs a change somewhere in the way we're doing things. And you know, the communication is so key, but being able to listen as part of that is one thing I think that men really have to grow in, because we don't have it, like, I don't think we have it naturally. You know, we think we know what's right. So there's a lot of listening that we have to do to actually come to proper solutions. And it's not that we're always right or we always had the right solution. Once you really hear and listen and find out what your wife's really saying, then you can come back and make some adjustments. All right, I've gone on too long with that. Sorry. Hope that helps.
No, it's fine. You answered my question. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bless you.
So we will answer how men's failures cause women to fail. We've touched on it there later on. But we see that a man has the ability to fix and to heal his wife and the woman. And he also has the ability to cause her to err. But also, she can err all by herself. So
if a man don't want to fix a relationship, it's over.
Well,
yeah.
Well, if he's the one who takes the lead in forming it, then I guess he's the one who really ultimately can control whether it continues.
A man should know that
or finishes.
If my woman leaves me, I got to go after her. I've got to fix it. Understand? If the man gives up on his family, it's the worst thing that can.
But didn't you once say it's a man's job to chase the woman's love?
Yeah,
that's correct. So, yeah, and that's biblical. That's because we're dealing with pattern here. Because everything you've said is in line with the pattern of the scripture of the responsibility of the male. So we see Hosea as God's example of his love for Israel, how he's chasing down this whore who keeps committing adultery. So therefore, in a relationship, a man's role is he's supposed to be the most loving person, according to scripture. And we're going to get into you know, what a loving a woman means. But actually, in the world, it's made it look like a woman's supposed to love her husband more than he does. But actually, a man's supposed to love his wife more than she loves him, because she's not asked to give her life for him, is she? But we'll get into that. But what was you going to say?
No, I get the essence of what you're saying, and I came to the conclusion, and I say to this day, I don't care whatever you hear in the future, if my marriage ever fails, I tell you today, and you can play it back to me, it's my fault. Yeah, it's my fault. And when I started teaching this in my church some years ago, when I got this understanding, some folks were like, "No, that's not right. You can't talk like that." I got to the point where I understood how much it was my responsibility to keep my house together, how much it was my responsibility to know the health of my family. If my marriage fails down the road, don't even think about blaming my wife. That's 100% on me. Yeah, and that's where I am. And I know there's a lot of men out there that don't agree with that, but if you don't think that way and if you don't feel that way, that means you don't have the ingredients to actually keep your marriage together. You actually don't have the wherewithal to endure the worst of storms in your marriages. You have to take responsibility. And this is all through the scriptures. God is always giving responsibility to men. The heads of tribes were men. It was always given to men to sort things out, to lead, to problem solve. And if we don't cultivate that mind, and I understand that women in the world that we're living in have had to cultivate such strong will and independence and ability, and that's just because of the breakdown. But for us as children of God, people with sons, we got to raise them with a different edge, a different way of thinking, a different mindset. We've got to let them know how big a job that is. Hey, it's a great responsibility to be a husband. It's one of the things I really want you to do. And between the age of, well, as long as, you're for 10 upwards, and it's not that we're not training them all along, but we really need to start soaking our kids with the mindset of how we are cultivating them to be leaders. And we have to be showing them that as fathers. We need to be giving them little hints and tips, and with the help of the Spirit, cutting them out to realize that one of the biggest jobs I'm going to have in life is to be a husband and a father. And it's one of the greatest things that I could do as a man.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I think the rest of the study is going to basically be an announcement or a pronouncement of what you've just said. So let's see where we get to.